Imagine planning a trip by typing one sentence. London Kensington indoor pool, under £500, and an AI brings back the best options with reasons. That's log search. Log search is an AI travel search assistant. You speak naturally, it plans a search, calls real travel data, and explains the picks. No more 15 tabs or guesswork. We're going to demo a single page application, which is hosted on the S3 bucket and is rendered via the CloudFront, the content delivery network, which aims to provide low latency The API gateway passes a request to the backend. It provides security in terms of access control, handles calls, and so the CloudFront app can call it only by allowing only authenticated users, mapping requests accordingly, and stripping and transforming headers and enforcing the JSON body to be returned accordingly. It also provides routing to the appropriate endpoints in terms of the routes, whether that be hotels, budgets, or plan, or the planner. The orchestrator, which is referred to as the model context protocol, in this, which has that particular capability, it will decide what agents are needed. It's going to send structured subtasks to the planner agent. The planner agent interprets intent, e.g. hotels, budget constraints, chooses which agent to call, whether that be the hotel agent or the budget agent. And just a reminder that the hotel and budget agents are workflow agents. They are basically deterministic and not necessarily AI agents in the proper sense of the term. The hotel agent is responsible for calling the Amadeus API to fetch raw hotel data, whether that be prices or corresponding amenities in relation to the hotels. The budget agent is responsible for filtering and ranking hotels by the budget rules which have been determined. We'll be also trying to enrich the results with a best match logic, for instance, adding pools or bonus rankings. The responder agent is essentially what is going to responsible for polishing the prose into natural language. For instance, it will say, here are 3 hotels under £500 with a great review, etc., etc., and give you a bit of more context to what you've selected or what has been rendered based on the query which has been requested. Overall, the API gateway is going to receive a returned response, and that will be represented on the screen for the viewer to see. So this is the GUI, the front end of the single page application which we've designed so far. We have basic screen layout, a place for like a city, a particular area, the date range in terms of when the customer is looking at booking the vacation. We have a field there for number of users or number of adults, and also field for budgeting in terms of how much the customer is willing to expend on their holiday. We have the option of indicating what sort of amenities will be required for the, at the location of the hotel. And the users will have the option of deciding on whether they want the AI narrative to accompany the returned results and a search function. Okay. So I'm just going to, I'll basically, before I do or make any entries here, I will ensure that I go into the developer tools mode so we can see what's happening at the back end in terms of the request, the response, as they kind of hit the back end, whether that be the API gateway or whether they are returning responses accordingly from the variety of capabilities which we mentioned earlier on. So you can see I just put in London as our city and the area, which I've included as well. And I've put the duration from the 31st of October to the 3rd of November. I have 2 adults and also £500. And I'm saying I prefer indoor pool. And I've opened the Dev Tools network option here. So we just see that there is some requests going through the backend and some responses being received on the front end, as you can see. So we have 5 responses in terms of our topics, as well as 7 responses in terms of everything that was returned, which includes options which are a bit more than our budget. So if we click on anything here, we can see the headers, which is nicely laid out. And obviously there are complexities around the use of API gateways, whereby we need to set calls in terms of access control, etc. We also need to define the method. So we define this as a post method. We can see the payload, which says find a 4-star hotel in London, Kensington, and we want to stay in the city of London. The neighborhood is Kensington, etc. And we put the maximum price there, as you can see that, which has been in the request. We have a preview of the requests and a preview of the responses here. And you can see the response in terms of what was returned. We're going to see whether this matches with what we're seeing on our front end. We'll do that as part of our test and go live. Just to reiterate some support services which have been used within the AWS ecosystem. We've used the system manager, what formerly referred to as the SSM parameter store. So that provides us with sort of a repository to store our model IDs. So in this instance, we are going to be using a planner model, which is the AI21 Jamba Instruct version as our planner model. And we're also going to be using a responder model in terms of cloud, which is here. And that is all that the model ID for invocation is also stored in the SSM parameter store. In relation to our interaction with the third-party Amadeus, they were kind enough to give us access to their API on a free tier. We are using we have the API keys and secret keys, or client IDs and client secret ID, stored on secrets manager. Okay, and I think I'll basically show that in the GUI now in terms of the console. We also have CloudWatch logs, which we are going to be leveraging for monitoring and observability, and also it's quite useful using this for debugging as well. For instance, we had a lot of iterations to make sure that the request was hitting the third-party endpoint, and we're also getting responses from the third-party endpoint. So there was a lot of back and forth going there, which I'll basically share with you later as to how all of that was resolved. As we said previously, this is a customer-first search amenity, accurate, budget-aware, and explainable application. We externalize our models with the use of SSM parameter store, and we also have our API keys in AWS Secret Manager, as you can see here. So it's actually, we're building this primarily like a production setting. Although we refer to the models, the planner model and the responder model, as their invocation IDs are stored within this construct, we also have other references here. For instance, we have the in terms of the deployment via CI/CD, we had to use CDK Bootstrap, and what this was supposed to do was essentially to sort of a pre-flight check within the CI/CD pipeline in terms of the deployment. So essentially, I think one of the use cases was if the account isn't bootstrapped to the minimum version that we require in relation to asset bundling. Essentially, what that means in terms of an analogy will be like sort of a venue readiness check. As I mean, we are having to show sort of a production in theater. We'll basically do like sort of a venue check as well as a stage setup check. And we check that everything is in place before we run the production. The other things which this is also used for, like multi-account hygiene, upgrade orchestration in relation to detection of drift, and to trigger a bootstrap upgrade job when a version is below its baseline, etc. Environment readiness, as I mentioned before. The pipeline step can validate that all target accounts or regions read the expected version. So it's more like it's always going to be that check have that check in place. The other reference in relation to the parameter is the logs frontend vit_logs API. This is essentially to be used for event switching, or say if we wanted to run blue-green environment cutovers, or even regional failure or preview builds. Okay, so the analogy around that will be if we had a delivery to a particular address, and that will be our front end destination for sending our parcels or whatever deliveries we intend to send. In the other instance will be in relation to this is essentially if we needed to flip URLs to a new backend before any DNS changes, etc., etc. If we had to have sort of a backup in relation to original failover, etc. This is why this parameter is in place here. Remember to subscribe to the channel and join us every 2 weeks as we continue to explore this use case. This is essentially episode 1, and next time we're going to be looking at AI agents explained, tools, planning, and MCP, which is the Model Context Protocol. If you love real-world cloud AI projects, hit the subscribe button as we continue to engage in this journey. Thank you.